Your home is not an asset. It is a beautifully decorated liability that is quietly eating your retirement before you even get there. For generations, we've been told that buying a home is the ultimate sign of financial success and the foundation of a secure retirement. But today, I'm going to show you why this American dream has become a financial nightmare for 90% of retirees, trapping their wealth in bricks and mortar while they struggle to pay for groceries. Most people spend their entire working lives pouring their hard-earned capital into a mortgage, believing that once the house is paid off, they will be free. But here is the brutal truth. A house you live in does not put money in your pocket. It only takes money out. Every single month, it demands taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities. Even when the mortgage is gone, these expenses remain, and they rise every year with inflation. This is what we call dead capital. Your wealth is locked inside your walls, but you can't eat your walls, and you can't use your kitchen tiles to pay for a medical emergency. When you reach age 65 and realize that 70% of your net worth is tied up in the roof over your head, you aren't wealthy. You are house rich and cash poor. The trap is set the moment you decide to buy more house than you actually need. We are conditioned to believe that a bigger house is a better investment, but in reality, it is just a bigger cash flow killer. Think about the opportunity cost. Every dollar that goes into a high-interest mortgage or a renovation project is a dollar that could have been invested in assets that produce monthly cash flow. By the time you retire, that dream home has often consumed hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential compounded growth. But the most dangerous part? Most retirees refuse to sell because of emotional attachment. They stay in a massive, empty house that is too expensive to maintain, watching their liquid savings evaporate while they sit on a mountain of equity they are too afraid to touch. If your retirement plan depends on the value of your primary residence, you aren't an investor. You are a gambler who is betting his survival on a single, illiquid asset. In the next part, we'll break down the math of the mortgage trap and show you exactly how much your home is actually costing you in lost freedom. If you think your $300,000 house is worth $600,000 just because the market went up, you are falling for the biggest accounting trick in history. Most homeowners only look at two numbers, the price they bought for and the price they can sell for today. But the pro investors look at the hidden friction that occurs in between, the thousands of dollars that never make it back into your bank account. Let's pull back the curtain on the real cost of homeownership. When you sign a 30-year mortgage, you aren't just buying a house. You are buying a massive debt obligation for the bank. In the first 10 years of a typical mortgage, the vast majority of your monthly payment isn't even touching the principal. It's going straight into the bank's pocket as interest. By the time you own the home, you have likely paid twice the original purchase price in interest alone. But it doesn't stop there. Add in property taxes that increase every year, homeowners insurance that spikes after every storm, and the inevitable maintenance tax, the 1% to 2% of the home's value that you must spend every year just to keep the building from falling apart. When you add all of these up, your investment is actually a high-maintenance liability that requires a constant infusion of fresh cash just to break even. The curiosity gap here is the opportunity cost. Imagine if that same interest and tax money had been placed into a diversified portfolio of income-producing assets that pay you every month instead of you paying them. The 90% who fail at retirement are those who believe that equity is the same as wealth. It's not. Equity is trapped. Wealth is fluid. If the market crashes the year you plan to retire, your equity can vanish overnight, but your property taxes and repair bills won't care. You are essentially carrying a heavy anchor while trying to swim across the lake of retirement. The wealthy understand that a house is a consumption item, not an investment strategy. They prioritize cash velocity, the speed at which their money returns to them, rather than locking it away in a brick-and-mortar vault for 30 years. In the next part, we are going to explore why the downsizing delusion is a trap that most people realize far too late, and how it can leave you stranded in your 70s. Planning to downsize your home for retirement is like planning to win the lottery. It sounds great on paper, but the reality often leaves you broke and homeless. Many homeowners tell themselves, "I'll live in this big house while the kids are here, and then I'll sell it at 65, buy a small condo, and live off the profit." Today, we are going to expose why this plan is a mathematical hallucination that destroys thousands of retirements every single year. The downsizing delusion fails because it ignores two critical factors: transaction costs and market parity. When you sell that big family home you've spent 30 years in, you don't get to keep the sticker price. Between real estate agent commissions, closing costs, moving expenses, and the repair-to-sell tax, you can easily lose 10% to 15% of your home's value before you even see a dime. But here is the real kicker. If your big house has gone up in value, so has the small condo you were planning to buy. In a rising market, you aren't cashing out. You are simply trading one expensive asset for another. You might move from a 4-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom apartment, but after taxes and fees, the profit you expected to fund your lifestyle for 20 years often barely covers 5. You've traded your space and your memories for a tiny bit of liquidity that evaporates almost instantly. But the trap goes deeper: the emotional and physical cost. Most people at age 70 do not have the energy or the desire to pack up a lifetime of memories, leave their neighbors, and move into a smaller, unfamiliar space. This emotional friction causes retirees to stay in their large, expensive-to-run homes way past the point of financial logic. They end up spending their precious liquid savings on heating empty rooms and fixing a roof on a house they don't even fully utilize. They are effectively asset-rich, but lifestyle-poor, eating cheap food in a million-dollar mansion because they can't access the wealth trapped in their walls. The 1% avoid this by never counting their primary residence as part of their retirement fund. They build their freedom fund entirely outside of their home, so that if they choose to stay, it's a luxury, not a financial death sentence. In the next part, we'll talk about the tax trap of homeownership that hits you exactly when you can least afford it. You never truly own your home. You just have a long-term lease from the government that gets more expensive every time you get older. The biggest lie in personal finance is the phrase, paid off. Even if you hand the bank the final cent of your mortgage today, you are still required to pay a subscription fee to live on your own land. And if you stop paying it, the government will take your asset away in a heartbeat. Most retirement calculators fail to account for the aggressive nature of property taxes and insurance premiums. When you are 40 and working, a $400 monthly tax bill feels manageable. But property taxes are tied to the value of the home, not your income. If your neighborhood gentrifies or the housing market booms, your tax bill can double or triple while your pension stays exactly the same. This is the tax trap of homeownership. You are essentially being punished for your home increasing in value. For a retiree on a fixed income, a sudden spike in property taxes is a financial heart attack. It forces you to withdraw more from your dwindling savings, accelerating the death spiral we discussed in our last series. You aren't just paying for the house anymore. You are paying to keep the government from evicting you from your own property. Then, there is the insurance crisis. In 2026, we are seeing insurance premiums skyrocket at rates that far outpace general inflation. In many regions, homeowners are seeing 20% to 50% increases in a single year due to climate risks and rising construction costs. For a senior citizen, this is a leaking pipe in their retirement bucket that they cannot fix. The 90% who fail are those who thought their housing costs would freeze once the mortgage was gone. They didn't realize that they were staying in a variable cost asset with a fixed income budget. The wealthy protect themselves by viewing their home as a liability and maintaining a tax and maintenance reserve that is separate from their living expenses. They know that if they can't afford the rent the government demands, they don't actually own the home. They are just a high-stakes tenant. In the next part, we will discuss the reverse mortgage trap, the predatory solution that many banks offer to desperate seniors, and why it's usually a deal with the devil. The bank isn't giving you your equity back. They are buying your home from you one piece at a time, and they are charging you a massive interest rate for the privilege. When retirees realize they are house-rich but cash-poor, the financial industry swoops in with a seductive solution called the reverse mortgage. It's marketed as a way to unlock your wealth and stay in your home, but for most, it is the final surrender of their financial legacy. A reverse mortgage is essentially a deal with the devil. The bank looks at the equity you've spent 40 years building and offers to pay it back to you in monthly installments. It sounds like a miracle, No more mortgage payments and extra cash in your pocket. But here is what they don't emphasize in the commercials. The interest on that money is compounding against you. Because you aren't making payments, the loan balance grows larger every single month. By the time you or your heirs are ready to sell, the bank often owns more of the house than you do. You are effectively cannibalizing your only major asset to pay for daily life, leaving your children with a pile of debt instead of an inheritance. The fees on these products are astronomical, often stripping away tens of thousands of dollars in closing costs before you even receive your first check. The trap is that a reverse mortgage doesn't stop the subscription fees we talked about in Part 4. You are still responsible for the skyrocketing property taxes, the ballooning insurance premiums, and the expensive repairs. If you fail to keep up with any of these, the bank can actually foreclose on you, even with a reverse mortgage in place. You've traded the security of ownership for a temporary cash infusion that the bank is using to slowly evict you from your own future. The 90% fail because they see this as found money, failing to realize it is actually a high-interest debt that consumes their last line of defense. The wealthy don't use reverse mortgages. They use asset conversion. They sell while they are still healthy and move their capital into high-yield, liquid investments before they are desperate. They control the exit. They don't let the bank dictate it. In the next part, we will explore the maintenance nightmare, the physical decay that turns your dream home into a financial sinkhole. Your home is a biological entity. It has a lifespan, and if you don't have the cash to perform surgery on it every decade, it will die and take your net worth with it. Most retirement plans assume your expenses will stay flat, but they forget that by the time you reach age 70, your forever home is likely 30 or 40 years old. This is the breaking point, where the bones of the structure begin to fail, turning your shelter into a financial sinkhole. The maintenance trap is the most underestimated expense in retirement. When you were 35, replacing a roof or a HVAC system was a frustrating setback. When you are 75 and living on a fixed pension, that same $15,000 repair is a catastrophic event. Houses are designed to decay. The roof, the plumbing, the electrical systems, and the foundation all have expiration dates. The 90% who fail are those who believe that paying off the mortgage means the house is done costing them money. In reality, as the house gets older, the cost to keep it habitable increases exponentially. If you don't have a massive cash reserve, you are forced to ignore the small leaks and the minor cracks. But in real estate, deferred maintenance is just a high-interest loan you are taking from the future value of the house. A home that hasn't been updated in 20 years doesn't sell for market value. It sells at a distressed discount. You lose twice. First, you lose the quality of life living in a decaying environment, and second, you lose your equity when you finally go to sell. This is the hidden rot of the middle class. They sit in homes that are literally falling apart around them because they've tied up all their cash in the walls and have none left for the repairs. They become prisoners of their own property. The 1% avoid this by treating their primary residence like a business asset. They have a capital expenditure fund that is fully funded before they even think about retiring. They know that if you can't afford to maintain the asset, you don't actually own it. You are just watching it dissolve. In our final part, we will reveal the sovereign strategy, the only way to turn your home back into an advantage instead of an obstacle. Stop being a house slave and start being a wealth master by treating your roof as a tool, not a trophy. We have spent this series exposing the house trap, but the goal isn't to leave you hopeless. The goal is to give you a sovereign strategy that ensures you are part of the 10% who thrive. To survive past age 70, you must change your relationship with your primary residence today. The sovereign strategy begins with a radical mindset shift. Your home is a liability until the day you sell it. Once you accept this, you can start making moves that the 90% are too afraid to make. First, you must prioritize liquid cash flow over home equity. If you have $500,000 in equity but you are struggling to pay your monthly bills, you aren't winning. You are losing slowly. The 1% use their home equity strategically. They might downsize early, not at 70, but at 55, when the market is high and they still have the energy to reinvest the proceeds into assets that pay them monthly dividends. They don't wait for a crisis to force their hand. They move when they have the most leverage. Second, Consider the rental arbitrage model. If your big family home is in a high-value area, could you rent it out for $4,000 a month and go live in a beautiful, lower-cost region for $2,000? In this scenario, your house trap suddenly becomes a cash cow that funds your lifestyle instead of draining it. This is how you turn a liability into a true asset. The final secret of the 10% is geographic arbitrage. They realize that their American dream, home in an expensive city, is actually a ticket to a king-like retirement in a different state or country where their capital has 5x the purchasing power. They don't stay loyal to a zip code that is robbing them of their peace of mind. Conclusion: retirement isn't about the house you live in. It's about the freedom you have. If your house is standing in the way of your freedom, it's time to move the house. Don't let your dream home become your financial prison. Start viewing your property through the lens of cash flow. Audit your true cost of ownership, and make the hard decisions now so you can enjoy the rest of your life later. The 90% will keep paying the subscription fee until they have nothing left. You are going to build a fortress of liquidity. The game has changed. Now go play it to win.